Welcome. Hi, Dr. Wanda. So glad to have you with us here today. And I just want to welcome everyone to the Empower for Change channel, where we
Mm.
explore and better understand how one's life's journey prepares you for your life's purpose. And we also celebrate and encourage people who are and who seek to make a difference in the world. I
Mhm.
am Deborah Gilbert White, also known as Dr. D, and I am the host of this session. And so just wanted to say hello to everyone and to our special guest, Dr. Wanda, who is coming to us from Ghana, the country of Ghana in Africa. And so today we welcome Dr. Evans Brewer, also known as Dr. Wanda. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to read your short bio. You have a lot
Okay.
here. You're doing a lot. So it's not that short, but
I
it's
crunched it, but go ahead.
well, you got a lot here still, my sister, but I'm going to read this because I think it's so important. You're doing some wonderful things and have done some wonderful things. Dr. Wanda, a scholar practitioner, grassroots activist, published author, and entrepreneur, a 36-year educator who has taught every level, including Spanish, for 8 years. Dr. Wanda hosts a successful internet radio program called Beyond the Surface Radio, which is intelligent internet radio laced with street reality and good old fashioned wisdom. As things have progressed, she also hosts a YouTube channel that chronicles her journey in Africa while maintaining a 22,000 following on TikTok, which highlights her grassroots work on the continent. To date, her work consists of planting many libraries, the installation of home toilets, providing mobile aid, as well as occasional mercy ministry. Dr. Wanda's activism has been long reaching. As such, she has provided technology, academic supplies, and life resources to six African nations in the motherland: South Africa, Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana, Zambia, and most recently, Liberia. She is most proud of the health fair she hosted in Lalonia, Ghana, called the G3 Tour, and distributing water to 13 communities in northern Ghana during the 2024-25 dry season. From educator to entrepreneur, Dr. Wanda launched an online store called Wandaland's Naturals. The store was created as a result of having her health challenges reversed, adhering to a Ghanaian wellness habits. Studying under the guidance of various local herbalists in Ghana, Dr. Wanda learned how to use leaves, barks, roots, oils, and herbs to heal herself and her 10-year-old daughter. The store was created to share the medicinal knowledge which is vital to natural healing for many. Thank you, Dr. Wanda, and welcome. How are you today?
Thank you. Oh, I'm happy to be here.
We're so glad to have you here, and just wanted you to share a little bit about your situation that you're in right now. Can you share with the audience what's happening in Ghana right now?
Okay. Right now we this is the rainy season, and 2 hours before I was supposed to sign on, we went into a storm. And usually, when there's a storm, we get a lights out. So I'm actually in darkness. Everybody in the whole community
Hmm.
um, have no lights. Okay, so you can't plug up nothing. And I saved my phones for this interview, so I'm using one phone for light and the other phone to talk here.
Oh, you are a true warrior. I appreciate you so much. Thank
Soldier,
you so much.
soldier.
Thank you, soldier. Okay. Well, Dr. Wanda, we first connected several years ago while I was doing research for my memoir about my experience
Hmm.
with homelessness. And I came across your story of economic struggle as a university professor and the need for a
Hmm.
living wage shared in a documentary. And although
Yes.
you had not experienced homelessness, your story resonated with me and what so many others were experiencing and continue to
Hmm.
experience. Please share with us a little about the documentary and if that was the start of your activism.
Okay. Well, the issue was I hadn't experienced homelessness,
Mm-hmm.
But the games or the shift in the way higher education is dealt with corporate America putting its hands in that mix, threw me into poverty. So the only thing that saved me is I had been a public school teacher and had, I made great purchases. I had at least secured me a home
Mm-hmm.
and didn't have a car note. Otherwise, I might have been homeless. So yeah, our coming together was about, and that's what the documentary was focused on. It was focusing on what was happening with professors, and many of them was returning back to live with their parents. Some of them was, losing all of their assets. Various people were beginning to take jobs that, you're not a PhD bagging groceries, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, we was a PhD bagging groceries. Myself, I started, driving Uber and
Mm-hmm.
Lyft and things like that to survive, and so that's what it focused on. But what was interesting was it also was happening at the time that they was doing the fight for 15. So
Yeah.
since they was doing the fight for 15, SEIU reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to talk about it?" Because most academics really didn't want to talk about it. They
Right.
just kept applying for schools, trying to find other, campuses online or off, brick and mortar, and we just wasn't getting anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason um, I was able to get on any platform is that I just was just outdone. I was flabbergasted that most of us had, we'd done everything right. You went to school, you stayed out of trouble, you didn't do drugs, you ain't in jail, you pay your taxes, you're a law-abiding citizen,
Mm-hmm.
and you getting handouts and you need them. It ain't an option. So that's what the documentary done by Brave New Films really focused on. And I was brave enough to talk about it and not be ashamed. And
Mm-hmm.
it was part of drawing a lot of great people to me, like yourself, because they said, "Hey, I can relate to this lady."
Mm-hmm.
And that was in the beginning of activism, because on and off throughout life, I've protested or been on the lines of this and that because I come out of Detroit, Michigan, which already had a history of some kind of militancy. So I was a part of that whole as a high school student, Free Mandela. I was at
Yes.
those rallies when the Klan decided they wanted to march on Washington after the when they decided to have the second march on Washington. I was a part of the group that was, saying no, you're not going to march. When the Nazis wanted um, to organize at the lakefront in Chicago, I was a
Mm-hmm.
part of the group that said no, you're not gonna. The Nazis are not gonna march. No, so I had
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of a history of being a part of a little leftist organization, and so I was comfortable pushing back. But I didn't see that as my full identity. I saw being a teacher more so
Mm-hmm.
with that. But it all is the beginnings that you're not aware of.
Right, right. I kind of sensed that when I first
Yeah.
met you, and
Hmm.
as I looked at the documentary and saw how your story was being portrayed, I sensed that you were involved in other things. But at that time, that the whole piece with the fighting for $15 minimum wage, and then also people who were in academia who were not who had, like you said, done what people said was the right thing, getting an education and going into serving other people, and trying to make a living, and then you find yourself struggling. And so I'm grateful that you were bold enough to speak about it. I knew I had to speak about it. And like you said, so many people who are going through these type of struggles, oftentimes they don't talk about
Hmm.
it. But I think it's necessary for us to talk about it so that we can be champions in bringing about the change that is needed. So I thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Now I had the opportunity to meet with you in Chicago, which seems like a
Hmm.
lifetime ago when we first met in person,
I
with your
know.
community allies. I know, with your community allies and with a few of your students. And it was clear that you are beloved by the young people, the students that you share knowledge with. You have been called the globe-trotting professor. What is it about being
Mhm.
an educator that feeds your soul? And what is different about doing that work in the US and in Africa?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I never wanted to be an educator. That
Mm-hmm.
was never the goal. The goal actually was to be a, a writer and a dancer. So for me, education is a calling, and the only reason I became an educator was my first husband, he was a sweetheart. He would take anything off of me. I could get away with a lot, but one thing he didn't accept was anything where I was defaulting with education. He was firm about me completing school and having a type of degree where I could feed myself. That was his
Mm-hmm.
argument. Like all that writing and dancing, that's cool, and I was pretty good at both of them. But it
Mm-hmm.
ain't. It's no necessarily a way for you to guarantee that you're gonna eat. And then with the writing, what I saw a lot of jobs was for proofreading,
Yeah.
and I'm way more into way more whimsical stuff than being sort of anchored and linear like that. And he saw that in me, and so he encouraged the education. So when I think back to being a kid, I was the know-it-all. I was always the one that they would ask me the questions, and I was the person that was comfortable researching. Well, let me go find out. And then my favorite place to hang out in Detroit was Parkman Branch Library. I stayed at that library. I was in everything going on at that library. So again, these are those things that
Mm-hmm.
are, you see them as just happenstance, but actually it's the beginning of something big. So yeah, it's not an accident that I plant libraries and that I love books and I write
Mm-hmm.
them, I read them, that I'm a bibliophile, I give them away. None of that's an accident. The teaching is just natural. Like it doesn't matter where I'm at. I am
Mm-hmm.
just a teacher at heart. It doesn't bother me to explain something to you. It doesn't bother me to share. I know there is something called intellectual property, and of course, we
Yeah.
all have some. But I pretty much treat it, biblically. If you want the wisdom, you want the knowledge, I'll share that freely.
Mm-hmm.
And unless I consider you like sort of parasitic, because you do get people that try to use you. They try to get information from you, and you're gonna get nothing out of it. They really
Right.
don't even care about you. They just want you to answer this question.
Yeah.
And I'm smart enough to figure that out and leave you alone. And then I was never that chick that was gonna write your paper. I was not that girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, you cute and everything, but I'm not finna do your homework, brother. So. Yeah, it's just I think the education is natural because I also am I'm a scholar, but I'm a professional student. I'm always
Mm-hmm.
learning from others, and I'm unhappy when I don't learn something new. So I think the greatest of us know that we know that we just don't know everything, but boy, do we try. We put a good try in. So yeah.
Yeah, I like what you said because I think it's important that we always be lifelong learners. That
Mm-hmm.
we are always teachable because no one knows everything, and
Mm-mm.
yeah, and I mean, and the sharing of what you know helps to progress. People in different ways, and so I appreciate that perspective that you shared. Um, you have stated that Africa saved your life. I saw that in something that you wrote that Africa saved your life, and I want you to tell us a little bit more about that. How did Africa save your life?
Well, at the worst, when I was in the middle of when I realized I was like not gonna get back on my feet um on the college campus. I got to a
Mm-hmm.
place where I realized I said, 9 times out of 10, Wanda, you're not gonna get tenure. The way it was going, like there was a time where they started pushing for us to get PhDs.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, okay, well, you at least have to have ABD. You at least have to have all but dissertation, and we
Yeah.
will accept you. Okay. And then it got to you had all but the dissertation, you had the PhD, and then you're going for these jobs, and it was just like they just was contract. It was just everything was just contract, and I could have even accepted contract, and I did accept contract, except it put me at three different campuses. I had to, in order to really have a real salary, I had to work three different campuses. So I was at the University of Phoenix. At the same time, I was at DeVry. At the
Mhm.
same time, I was at Concordia University rotating these classes. And and then I stopped being able to juggle all of it because they would one would keep me, the other would take it away, the other was just kind of boring. And I found myself like just working with a template. And I started saying to myself as I was losing things, I couldn't manage my utilities. I started downsizing because you had to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I realized, I said, wow, you so stupid. You was in middle school, you was teaching high school, and I was a $90,000 player. I knew that I would be paid. I knew what the gig was, all of that, because I taught high school 17 years. That you did all
Mhm.
that for what? Now you
Yeah.
now you getting an EBT card. Now you because here's the thing people need to know. When you a college professor, and in particular an adjunct, you can't get unemployment on the times that you're not working because you're not fired.
Yeah.
So you're not fired and you're not laid off. And I one time tried to work it anyway. I sent it in order to
Mhm.
get the unemployment because I desperately needed it. And I got the unemployment. Okay? And what I got after that was a letter bringing me to something I had never heard of, which was unemployment court. There's actually a court that where you get judged for that. Okay?
I didn't know
And to
that.
make a long story short, I ended up having to pay all of it back, and they put me on suspension, meaning like I couldn't get unemployment for like they put me down for like a year.
Mhm.
So people said at that time I ran into some people who said if you was any place else but the states, they would respect you for your experience and your teaching credentials. They would respect you.
Mhm.
And the gentleman said, and the motherland needs you. And I don't know if the Red Sea parted or the clouds came together. I don't know, but I said at that point I just had nothing to lose.
Mhm.
So I had no idea what the Africa landscape would look like. Um, but I knew I just had to see because I said at this point, they've backed me into such a corner that I even feel ashamed to
Mhm.
be a PhD. I felt ashamed of it because it's like you so smart, get yourself out of this jam then, and I couldn't.
Mhm. Right.
So that was part of what coming to Africa did. It gave me back my identity. As soon as I hit the continent, there's such a huge appreciation for education and educators. They
Mhm.
just love education, and they actually are a very over educated underemployed group like myself. So that was
Mhm.
the first thing. The other thing was this stuff tears up your health. All the stress and
Mhm.
the depression, the fighting the depression, the sadness that comes on from the lifestyle of poverty. Because at some point, it's more than just you in poverty. There's a lifestyle that goes with it.
Yeah.
Going to the pantries and eating low. You have to eat a lot of stuff out of cans and a lot of because you can't have it. You're not shopping in Whole Foods. You can't afford it.
Mhm.
So my health went down so bad. My blood pressure was high. I wasn't getting up and going out. So, I don't mind being a full figured woman. I like myself. I've been everything from a 10 to a 20. And I
Mhm.
like me at every one of them. It doesn't bother me.
Mhm.
Okay. But when those numbers are bad, okay,
Yeah.
the blood pressure high, the weight is obesity, the
Mhm.
cholesterol. It's no, see now you in danger. It's not
Right.
cute no more. So I was looking at where my health was, and then the stress of it, I got sciatica. I ended up with
Oh.
severe sciatica, and I would when I had stuff to do, I would pop the ibuprofen so I could be move, I could move and be
Mhm.
functional. But you can't live on ibuprofen and wear down your kidneys. You bringing on another problem. So
Right.
facing that, I said when I got to the motherland, that was my introduction to really using natural medicine to heal myself.
Mhm.
And when you get to the continent, you can't find the level of processed food. In fact, you get to the airport, you drop 10 pounds at the airport just from the heat. The heat suppresses it.
Right.
You do. And then, you add that good vitamin D and you move, and the next thing I knew, like, um, between that and learning about the power of bitters and soursop and black seed, all of this stuff,
Hmm.
getting this nice natural cocktail together, it removed all of the inflammation off of the sciatica. And I haven't had sciatica since. It removed it all off of
Oh.
those nerves, and that's ultimately what it was. So that was that. And Gia was pre-diabetic. You know, the black neck, the body odor, the things that go with diabetes. And she
Hmm.
had a reversal of everything. And so I said, wait a minute now. I think I can regain some life if I take my experiences with the continent seriously, and so I've been
Hmm.
taking it serious ever since.
I wanted to ask you, what country did you go to first? Because I know you've been to several of the countries there. Where did you land first?
The first country was South Africa. We went to
Hmm.
a village called Dirkesdorp, or the Africans call it Mabola, and we lived with the Zulus for just 2 months. But it was
Hmm.
a what I consider a soft landing to the continent because it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, and it gave me a feel of what their poverty wasn't my poverty, but it was poverty,
Hmm.
and so I came to understand like yeah, as much as we want to act like it's all like lateral, it's even, it's not.
It's not. Yeah. Yeah, my first trip to the continent was South Africa as well. I was able to go there with an organization I was working with at that time for the World Conference Against Racism. That was my first introduction of going to the continent
Mm.
and then connecting with people from around the world who we all were looking at the issue of racism and being anti-racist, and also looking at apartheid, what's after apartheid, the aftermath of apartheid. And so, but I am so glad that I had that experience. Have been back since to other parts, but glad to have that experience because it really opened my eyes to some of the stereotypes that we have learned or seeing here in this
Yes.
country, compared to what is actually there in the motherland. And so that's one reason why I think that I know that's one reason that I like to follow you and what you're doing over there, because you bring the reality of life there in so many different spectrums, and I appreciate you continuing to do that education piece across the board. And your lovely daughter Gia,
Thank you.
yeah, your lovely daughter Gia, who's there with you right now, and continuing to have her school experience there in Africa
In boarding school.
and boarding school.
Yes, little black
Yeah.
girl in boarding school.
Yeah. So, well, as a mom, how have you seen the difference in Gia, being in a different culture, in a different country or different countries, and her educational growth? How have you seen that difference?
Well, she was your average um bratty American kid.
Mm-hmm.
You you got a whole bunch of gadgets and things, a bunch of toys and this and that. You get catered to in terms of choice of what you want to eat and what you want to do for the day. And you got a TV in your room, and the
Mm-hmm.
parent is debating with you about go to bed, and taking your remote, and of course you done snuck back out and got your remote and got it back on. I mean, she was that. And now she is very disciplined, very respectful.
Mm-hmm.
She understands the elder system because she was in the house with me and my mother, with her grandmother. But that's different from understanding that through any place you go, there is a pecking order, and there are rules of engagement for young people that are
Mm-hmm.
separate from adults, and learning how to navigate that. She's done all this stuff by herself. She's probably one of my biggest, like when I think of a shero, she's my shero, because
Mm-hmm.
to be a 5-year old to come to a foreign nation and learn their languages and eat the food and deal with the climate and try to make friends. And it's one thing if you even got a sibling. She had no one.
Right. Right.
And now, next week, what is it, 2 weeks from now, she'll be 15. And when I first started bringing her to Africa, she was 5. In fact, I told her, you had that missing tooth. That's the only time you can be a woman with a missing tooth. and still be considered cute.
Oh my.
Um, so yeah, she amazes me. She couldn't read. She was in school and was a delayed reader, and um, Ghana's education system is reading, writing, and rigor. They don't have all them whistles and bells, and
Mm-hmm.
so you can get them knuckles cracked, you can get that butt whooped, um, or you can have that homework ready. And she had a period where she was taking them beat downs, and I told her, I said, listen, this is Africa, and I was clear with the school. My daughter is like all these other children. She's not a mascot. She's not the school's mascot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she has to. And now I look at her writing. Her writing used to be giant size, and she writes so beautiful and nice and clear, and
Mm-hmm.
she always loved history, and now I can hear it. Like, she can express herself, she studies
Yes.
well, she puts time aside. It's just a whole different child in terms of academics.
Mm-hmm. I can't believe that she's 15. I've seen the on YouTube
Hmm.
and some of the TikToks, and it's like, yeah, she's very articulate. She's sharing her life story there, and just engaging people in very and interesting ways.
Hmm.
You are involved in life changing work in Africa, and I know of one of your current projects, which was providing clean water to communities. I remember you working to provide home toilets. How are the projects going, and what are you involved with, and how can folks be supportive of your work?
Well, one thing is I rotate um, the work. I work in four areas:
Mm-hmm.
education, sanitation, mobile aids, and a little bit of mercy ministry. I rotated. And part of the reason I rotated is because I don't chase corporate money. I don't chase mega church money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't chase after the grants. I don't have the time or energy to do it. And some of the grants are really beautiful, but I don't really have I just don't have the time and energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'm using black folks standard structure, which was grassroots. You
Yes.
just the same thing they used in the civil rights movement,
Mm-hmm.
and before. You just looked at the people, and the people really had it. They just needed to come together and share. And um, I alert the people to what I see. And some people's hard to move. If it's moved, great. If you can afford it, great. If you can't share, if you just share it, you helping
Mm-hmm.
me a lot. Because somebody in that network is interested in helping.
Right.
But you know, our networks are limited. Like, you and I are friends, but we may have like maybe 15, 10 friends that overlap. You got a whole set of people I don't even know, and you can't
Mm-hmm.
speak for them. So
Right.
with grassroots activism, all you have to do is just, put the word out and let people decide what they want to be involved in. So the library planting is just my baby. that
Mm-hmm.
that Wandaland's mini library. If I can't do nothing, I know the US throws away books. I was at the schools. I was a dumpster diver. I
Yes.
couldn't wait for the principal and the administration to go, so I called my little crew, and we pull up that minivan in the back of the school, because they tell you don't touch that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I was going to touch that stuff, and I load up my truck and move to Beverly. I was out of there. And so,
Yeah.
they still doing it. You get a new administrator, they throw the books away. They shut down a school, they throw the books away. They don't even give them to other districts that don't have as good a material. So I'm never
Mm-hmm.
going to have a shortage of academic supply. Long as I know educators, and I've been in the field a
Right.
long time, somebody can give me at least
Mm-hmm.
100 to 200 books. Is whether or not they want to help me or not is really the issue. Because I'm
Question.
not asking them to spend no money. They just gotta be willing to collect.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of mobile aids, the same thing. We have a surplus of them because we are a country full of centenarians. This is the largest number of centenarians. Our young people are dying. They doing drugs. They getting shot up. Some of them in jail. But we have tons of mobile aids, floor walkers, canes, things like that. So I don't.
Right.
I don't have a problem getting that stuff. Sometimes it needs to be shipped to me. Sometimes people are willing to liquidate what they have and give me the finance from it. Um, and then when you uh, when you talk about sanitation, I've
Mm-hmm.
had food poisoning twice since I've been here, And both times it took me to my knees. And both times
Mhm.
it was the same food. It was a woman making okra stew. And even now, that was like 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Mhm.
I eat okra stew, but
Mhm.
mildly because I'm still reminded of those
Right.
days. But what people don't see in this push for tourism is that 70% of this country practices open defecation. They are literally using the bathroom in the bush outside. As beautiful as these people look, as well
Mhm.
dressed, as many fancy things that you go on with food and fashion, and
Mhm.
they're using it outside. So I can act like it's not my problem. But the truth
Right.
is you're gambling because the country does have outbreaks of cholera. It does have outbreaks of typhoid. And I ain't never been to a place in Africa where flies didn't exist, and they definitely transfer, if nothing
Right.
else, disease because they land on fecal. So when I
Right.
realized, I said, if nothing else, um, because I'm real hardcore about the power of one. If
Mhm.
I help one, I did a lot. That's okay. I've served, but we was able to do 35 home toilets, and that's a lot. And four of them was in my community, so that's at
Mhm.
least that family not boo booing outside. Because like now this
Mhm.
is the rainy season. When they
Right.
do that, the urine is one thing, but when they do the fecal, they put it in those black bags and they toss them anywhere. And so when the rainy season comes, the pressure of the water floats and it opens up the bag, and that fecal goes into water sources. And
Yes.
so they don't have the sophisticated filtration. It's not like, in America, you got folks that's always walking around with their own personal,
Mhm.
filtering cup, or
Yeah.
they put it one on their faucet. That's not happening here.
That's not
So
happening.
I realized, I said, for my own wellness and to alert others, like, you can come over here and do Daddy December and have you a good time, and
Mhm.
get you some chocolate man if you want to. You
Mhm.
better start looking at your overall health. Everything is not book bags and pens and pencils to these kids. You might
Mhm.
want to, especially if you get a home, or you have a favorite community, you might want to bless somebody with a toilet.
Right. Right.
And they're inexpensive relative. It's like about, for a biodigester toilet, which needs
Mhm.
very little water, altogether is maybe about 250 US.
Mhm.
And I
And that's,
think that's worth it.
yeah, it is worth it, especially when you're talking about the larger health issues that can come from not having a sanitation piece. Now,
Larger
also,
health issues that they don't show
mhm,
you,
right, that yeah, we're not seeing it here. Yeah,
that you're
we're
not
not-
seeing. Yes.
right. So you've been involved in building housing as well. How did you get into that?
Repeat what you said.
I said you've been involved in building housing. I know it's at one point I was talking with you and you were either building
That
housing or
was in
help.
Uganda.
Oh, that was in Uganda.
That was
Okay.
in Uganda. Yeah, I had a
Okay.
woman following me,
Uh-huh.
and she actually, I never wanted to build nobody no house. Let me tell you that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The woman was following me, an American woman, and she taught me a great lesson. And she liked the wooden houses. They're kind of like what you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and
Mm-hmm.
get those little wooden structures. And she said she watched me with the women, and she said she would like to build them a house, but she would only build it when I returned back to the country because she didn't want the money mismanaged.
Okay.
So I returned back, and there was a woman, Sonko, and she was my best teacher. And she was the strongest of the women because most
Mm-hmm.
times we're not friends with African women. We're not enemies, but we're not friends. They see us like rich white women.
Mm.
You understand? They just see us like they want to work for us, help us with some. Well, I can clean, I can cook for you, I can do your hair, but they don't see us as like
That's
girlfriends. We're not about
yeah.
to, sit down and swap the tea. So
Mm-hmm.
this woman was strong enough to actually talk to me woman to woman. She wasn't afraid of me. So it was the woman sent like $350 for us to get started with this project. We had a groundbreaking. All of this good stuff went on. It was
Mm-hmm.
getting close to time for me to travel back. I stayed there like 68 days. I said, okay, I'm finna leave, and this house is not done. Like, what's up? She said, I don't have the money, and I don't know when I'm gonna have the money.
My.
Meanwhile, she was every other day putting up these Christian posts and you need to do this, and Jesus said that, and Moses said this, and I couldn't believe it. I could not. And the thing about this particular woman, when you diving in these villages, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I knew if we broke her spirit, because the other women saw her as like a hero, like, dang,
Yes.
she gonna
Yes.
get a house. I said, if her spirit breaks, they all are
My.
broken. So I didn't have any money, but it took me almost 2 years to build her house. Because remember, I went back, I had been away from home for
Mm-hmm.
almost, 3 months. I'm chronically underemployed. I pinched and pinched and pinched. I did everything, and I was sent forward that money, and we built that house. And finally, we got to that last brick. And so I definitely thanked Jehovah. I said, thank you for all the covering, and he helped
Mm-hmm.
me. But it also taught me to be careful with people watching the work,
Right. Right. Right.
because they
Yeah.
do sometimes wish they could be you. They do try to get close to you, and they think that they can get some of the magic through osmosis.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just are private saboteurs. They get sick of seeing
Mm-hmm.
what they consider winning. Me, I'm just working,
Right. Right.
and I'm just being myself. I don't even know why I get some of the opportunities, and why
Mm-hmm.
things that go that way. You understand? I
Mm-hmm.
don't have
Oh, I
a
understand.
a
Yeah.
blueprint. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but they think I do, and I don't. But
Right.
no, so that was the one house, and I said, Father God, please don't put. Come on, I know you give me challenges. This one was big, yeah, but
Right.
I did build that house.
Yeah, I remember. I remember some of that process. I didn't know the whole backstory to that, so thank you for sharing that. I think that
Hmm.
oftentimes, and I guess I don't know if you found this to be true, that people will come over to the continent to do good work, without really understanding, the culture, without really understanding that it takes more than just having a good heart to support people, that there's some real issues in working with people in different cultures and different countries, and that we have to be cognizant of that. So I thank you for
My
sharing that.
friend says, my friend says, how does she describe it? She said, we need to get that inner cracker out of us. There's many of us
Ah,
coming to the continent,
mm-hmm,
and we haven't dealt with that inner white man, and he's
mm-hmm,
in us because we've
mm-hmm.
been under his thumb. We've lived with him,
Right,
so we
right.
know him. We know him real
Mhm,
well. But some of
mhm,
us have consumed a little bit too much of his energy, and
mhm,
we bring it right over to the continent. The other thing I'm seeing is a lot of trauma, unhealed trauma, where you have not dealt with yourself enough. So when
mhm.
Marcus Garvey said all of us were not fit to come,
Yeah.
many of us that are coming are not fit to come. So I'll give you an example. Okay.
Okay.
I tried to explain to many of the women. I said, listen, you're a woman. Just by the nature of woman, the men will want you, but the way they are engaging with you is against the cultural rules. If you live among them, you see, like
Yeah.
they discourage shacking. The women are required to have a bride price, and it has to be met. You don't just
Mhm,
come get somebody's daughter. It happens, but it's not celebrated. It's not
mhm,
encouraged.
mhm,
Um, that you don't see women publicly drunk. You don't see them smoking cigarettes. That's
mhm.
discouraged.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, it's a social turnoff for many. Okay, they just don't do that.
Right.
That that when you're talking and you're sharing all of your information, that you're empowering them to actually prey upon you. So there's a level of privacy that you need to, modest is hottest. So I've
Mhm,
been here 5 years. This community, they never see me go take money.
mhm.
I never go to the ATM. I'll go to the ATM in another village, but I'll never go to the ATM here.
Where you are. Okay.
because they pocket watch, because they all, it's like a big high school. They all know each other on some level. And so if doctor is going to get money, somebody can tell
Somebody
somebody,
else.
oh yeah, and she got 20,000 Ghana and she pulled out 10,000 Ghana. Uh-huh. She comes every day. She comes once a week. No, you don't do it.
Wow.
Modest is hottest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But these are things that we already know back at home. We know to be, don't go to the ATM at night. You know,
Right.
go to the ATM where you can go inside and the door shuts behind you. Like, the precautions need to be there, but we don't want to really think. We want to believe that we're
Mm-hmm.
coming to, like, some sort of utopia. And it's like, no, these are strangers. These are just people.
Right. And people, yeah, people have some of the same tendencies everywhere. Everywhere. Every part of
Yes.
the world. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I I know that you have started Wandaland Naturals. And
Yes.
yes, and I want to talk. I want to spend some time talking about Wonderland Naturals. And you shared a little bit earlier about changing your diet and eating differently. But talk about Wonderland Naturals and what's happening with that.
Okay. Wandaland's Naturals grew out of, one, my own self healing, but
Mm-hmm.
two, because I've considered Ghana the Garden of Eden, honey. It's on the leaves, the trees, the barks, the berries, the oils. That you're standing in the middle of health,
Garden Eden.
and the medicine is the food is the medicine, and the medicine is the food. So I realized that. Now, the short story is, the man I married was an unqualified husband. He was not qualified to be my husband. He was not able to take care of me. And of course, men will promise you the moon and give you sawdust.
Mm,
Okay? But I'm not no crybaby. I'm a soldier. So
yes.
I had to figure out a way not to go back home defeated, because I said, I see that I can have a life here in Ghana, or rather Africa, because it didn't have to be Ghana,
Right.
but I need to be able to feed myself. My son gave me a challenge. He said, you tell me, because he was sick of all this Africa stuff, sick of it. He said, you tell me how you can feed yourself and my sister, and don't bring up no man. And so Wandaland's Naturals, I decided to hoist me an online store online, because I
Mm-hmm.
realized my people, my tribe, the tribe of the stolen African, they're sick. Lots of diabetes,
Yes.
lots of high blood pressure, erectile dysfunction, chronic constipation. We got it all, because
Hmm.
we're really consuming Franken food. It's not even real food anymore, and they don't even hide it too much from us no more.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be able to get not only the medicine for myself, but I said, I want to get this back to my people. Those who are open and willing will try, and those who
Mm-hmm.
won't. But I want them to have the option. So it came from the deepest, most loving part of myself. But it also
Yeah.
came from a need to survive over here. How do you take care of yourself and your daughter, and upstage the natives? Because the natives don't really support us initially. They
Mm-hmm.
adore me, and they didn't support me. They wasn't gonna come to my brick and mortar store, because they
Okay.
saw it like, why should we give that rich white woman our money? She should be giving me her money.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I didn't worry about meditating, getting mad at them. I just cut them out, because I took the store online. You
Mm-hmm.
understand?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's that intellectual. That's that PhD in me. Okay.
You're a thinker.
They call me doc for a reason. Okay. So
You think.
now, Wandaland's Naturals is actually 4 years old, but
Mm-hmm.
at 3.5, and I was on Etsy, had over 3,500 sales,
Wow.
700 hearts, and they shut my butt down.
Why?
They closed it. And they're giving me warning because of the herbs. Big Pharma is
Okay.
everywhere, and Big Pharma is tough.
Yeah.
And so I didn't talk about it. I mean, I've talked about it here, but September of last year they closed my store. So, see, God is good to you. You got to
Mhm.
shut people out and shut down to hear it. I was warned by a woman that shot for me. She said, "Doctor, you might want to back yourself up with your website," and I did. And instead of coming up with some old deep name, it was just instead of wandalands.etsy.com, it was just it's wandalands.com.
Yes. Yeah.
So the difference is on Etsy I was like maybe 30 sales a week. On my website I'm like three or four. So it has, I mean, I got the wind knocked out of me. I mean, I got knocked
Hmm.
down to my knees again. Okay, so that's why you see me go out and vendor now. I'll go out, I speak and I vendor. I speak
Hmm.
and I vendor because once again, just like
Hmm.
back in the U.S., I'm being challenged to choose between my hide and my soul. I could give up the herbs and sell dashikis and boo boos and
Yeah.
you understand. I can do
Hmm.
that, but and listen, I sell them. But that ain't what I'm about. I'm
Right.
about the herbal medicine. And I'm a middle-aged woman and my body
Hmm.
is changing.
Yeah.
And my friends are getting challenges that they've never had. And when I'm talking to a sister friend and she says, "Oh, my breasts are lumpy," I know what to tell her to do for lymphatic health.
Yes.
When I
Yes.
talk to a male friend and he says, when I pee, the urine splits, I know to tell him, listen, you might have an STI. You may want to take this herb to clear. You understand? I know,
Yes. Yes.
and I don't want to lose that. And
Right.
so I have been riding this storm, living as modest as possible. And this is where that unqualified husband inadvertently helped me. Is that to live with him, I had to come down 7 notches and bring him up 3. And I am a professional student, so I studied him. What you do when you get water, what you do when you ain't got money for what you do for your life, how do you eat? So I know how to
Yeah.
take 20 CDs and get a meal.
Hmm.
I know how to do that. I know how to live here very
Right.
modestly, and I never lived in a cry. I never started off, trying to have America and Africa. I let Africa
Right.
be Africa,
Because,
and
hmm.
so that has saved me. So I'm okay. I live fine. You see, I'm still overweight, so I'm not starving. I'm able to. I live a very modest life here. I keep everything as streamlined as possible, and in the
Yeah.
interim, I just had to adjust my hustle. So sometimes I sell things in bulk. Sometimes I do the vendoring, and I'll get a surplus of money, and the same financial literacy that my mother taught me, I'm still using
Hmm.
it. Your savings account is your best friend.
Okay.
When you get some money, you pay yourself first. Then
First,
you take care of your bills. You put okay. All of that is still with me.
Mama taught you that.
It's still with me. And I teach women that. Now, they do what they want to do. They party, they go to this or that restaurant, they trying to have Mexican and Italian food in Ghana. I say you can do that, but what I spend for a meal is 30 CDs. What you just spend for one meal is 250 CDs.
Mm.
You're not going to make it here. If you
Right.
get a bump in the road, if you have a crisis, you have to learn how to do that. And so Wandaland's natural being shut down was the greatest test of all. It says, okay, now you don't have this money coming in. Because I always had at least $20, $30 dropping in every day.
Hmm.
So now I know. I said, okay, now I know for sure. Living on my own with my daughter, I can make it in Africa. No doubt.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was finagling trying to get back on Etsy, but when Etsy get rid of you, they check your IP, they check your phone, they know you. Okay, any email address, they efficient.
Hmm.
And a friend, she was trying to open it up for me, and if my name went up there, they shut it down. If they saw my product, they shut it down. So I said, but come on, girl, we came from
Hmm.
the boat throughout slavocracy, through Reconstruction,
Detroit
you
and
understand the
Chicago.
civil right? Yeah, we don't just come on, man. Y'all ain't got nothing on me. I'm black. Y'all don't have nothing on me. So
Right.
a beautiful woman who been following me, she came, and even my own family wouldn't open up an Etsy
Hmm.
store for me. They had different people. I only asked two of them. They had their reasons. Girl, I don't
Yeah.
care. I just
Right.
go on, okay. But this woman is also excited about what she saw when she came here. And she said, I would love to, like move shea butter and the Bible oil. And she's like, yeah, and I can learn from you. I said, uh-oh, I got me a partner. So I said, okay, we set up our affiliate
Hmm.
arrangement. She get 20% off whatever. You file it on your taxes. What I need this regular income coming in. We dapped up,
Yeah.
we started it. So I'm back up on Etsy as Mama Gia stuff.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love it.
so
I love it.
we finally had our first and that's what they called me in South Africa, Mama Gia. They never called me doctor. They called me
Okay.
Mama Gia. So I said, I know y'all don't know that name. And
I
so I'm
love it.
back up there, and we finally had our first couple of sales, and so it's slow moving, but that's everything. To get
Hmm.
started, you just have to
Building.
start it. So you'll have to revisit me next year and say,
Hmm.
okay, let me get my update on Wandaland's Naturals. But yeah, they slapped the hell out of a sister. They slapped me right off their platform, and
Hey, you're a soldier. You're a soldier, and you keep
I'm a
proving
soldier.
over and over again. One thing I want to do, when we go live with this, I would like to put in the information, with this video about how people can connect with you and how they can donate to your projects as well. So we'll have all that
Oh,
information,
beautiful.
okay, so that people can connect with you beyond this because you're doing great and wonderful things. My final question to you, my sister, is there a question I have not asked that you would like to answer?
Um, what do I see? What do I want for myself for the future?
Okay, so yeah, well, tell us, what do you want for yourself for the future?
Well, I went north. I started donating that water to
Okay.
the north, and it turns out that's where the majority of the enslaved came from. We came out of the north, so I went to the original slave market, that big tree that they chained us to, and I went
Hmm.
to I saw the 30 wells that's still there, where they had us dig our own wells in order to cook for them, and we bathed, we did everything with those wells before they moved us down through Accra and got us out of here. Okay, and going there, I was able to see the shea butter trees, the shea trees, and they
Hmm.
all over. They all over. It's very lush and pregnant with them. And I stepped to the major factory and I went to the smaller factory. And so from this, once again, from this Wanderlands Naturals experience, I realized, I said, okay, you survive in this storm, but you need that one commodity that just sells. And shea butter simply sells. It
Hmm.
goes out all over the world, and it is a heart healthy oil. We eat it here. That you actually cook with it. You can fry with it. You can make your jollof rice with it. They eat it just like you eat cocoa butter. You can make your
Hmm.
cookies with. Like it's a real oil.
Okay.
So I decided. I crunched the numbers, found out what it would cost. But my goal going into 2026, I want my own shea butter factory because I need people to travel to that north when they visit, and they need to go out of there with Wandalands, shea butter, and buckets. And I need to make sure that I leave a simple enough legacy for Gia. If
Hmm.
something happens to me, it won't be hard for her to run that industry.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're doing these online stores, they're a little bit more ticky tack because you're
Hmm.
dealing with that white man's platform, his rules, his regulations. You understand his
Yeah.
tax account, the way he makes you accountable for your tax and all that. No, like, I want that. So that's what I want going forward.
Well, that sounds like a beautiful plan and a legacy to leave for Gia with the work you're
Got
doing.
to.
And yeah, you got to do that. Okay, so I just want to say thank you. Our time has come to an end. I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you coming in and being with us today in light of what's happening over there with the lights out and everything. And I want you to know that I
Hmm.
love you, my sister, and I will continue to
I
follow
love you
you.
too.
I know you do. We love each other, and just I'm just so proud of you, and just an honor to be in your friend circle. So thank you so much.
Aw,
Thank you.
you welcome.
Okay, have a good one.
Okay,
Bye
good
bye.
night.